Alright, well, it's been a while since I've had one of these on the bench. I have one of my spare 212s here that, now that I'm out of the mini bike business, or trying to get out of the mini bike business, I have a frame that I sold the race motor off of, and I have this spare motor, pretty much stock carb on it yet, stock exhaust, stock muffler on it. I'm going to just put it on this thing and unload it on Craigslist or whatever. So I need to take care of something before I can put it back together. So I really chowdered the shit out of the threads here on the crankshaft, and before I put the flywheel back on, I want to try to clean up the chowdered end of the threads so that I can get a new crank bolt to hold the flywheel on. So what I did was ordered a Chinese die from Amazon. It's a 14 by 1.5. I ordered one of those, and I have a Harbor Freight file. So I'm gonna work on, let me bring this over, I'll show you real quick how bad they are. It's not terrible, but I can't get any type of nut to start on that. So I'm gonna clean them up with the file and run this die over it. See if I can get it to the point where I can get another nut on there. But like I said, this is just gonna go on the frame that I got, and then I'm gonna unload this one too. Just trying to clear out some space in the garage. Oh, and if you hear like a hissing noise or a flaming noise, it's my propane heater that I got running in the garage. It's probably like 30 degrees outside right now, so just trying to take the chill off the garage while I'm out here. But let me take a look at this, see if I can clean them up somewhat. Now all I'm gonna do is take the edge of this file here and just kind of work the threads that are rolled over. There's quite a few of them on this front end. What I think I'm going to do from now on, if I run into this, is I think a lot of guys will actually remove the first two threads, hit them with a flap wheel or whatever, just so this doesn't happen. You actually can remove the threads, and you'll have a little snout on there without threads. It actually serves as like a little locator for the bolt, or I'm sorry, not the bolt, the nut. I hate when people do that, when they say one and mean another. But so yeah, a lot of guys will actually take these threads and hit them with a grinder and remove the threads so this doesn't happen. And like I said, once you remove the threads from the snout here, you actually are left with like a little stub, a little stump that you can just, you know, put the nut over it. Put the nut over it and just tighten it down without even really thinking, because it'll auto locate, if you will. Now this is all going to be by eye. I don't really have, you know what, let me see if I can get the handle for this beast. See if I have one that's big enough. actually use this die wrench, but we will try it out. See what happens. And no, we won't, because it's not. This is a Craftsman set, and the dies are bigger. Go figure. Oh well. I'm not using that. Fuck it. So, what I'm gonna do is go back at these here. And see if I can get a little bit more bite to that die before I go ahead and start cranking on her. Some of these threads are just completely rolled over, and I prefer not to cut new threads. I prefer just to straighten out the ones that are already here. So the more I can clean up and get this die centered, I can just run the die down and just cut out the areas that are boogered. So this top part's really cocked. I wonder if I can just bypass those. I could probably even just do what I just explained earlier and just grind these off and then just get down to a good section of threads, but I'm going to give this a shot. So see if I can get this started. Thought I had it there for a second, actually. So I'm trying to see that this thing isn't completely wampus when I start. Put some leverage on it. That's going to be the tricky part. The tricky part's going to be trying to get this thing started straight. Really don't wipe up the threads that are already there, so. I will say that this cheap Harbor Freight file set is actually pretty decent. I mean, I'm not a blacksmith or anything, but I bought that set that has like the handles that you can remove and put on different files, and I mean, they're hardened. They take the material off, so they actually work pretty decent. That actually looks pretty good. So maybe, once I get this thing back together, put it up on Craigslist or Facebook. Some little kid's parents will pick them up a sweet little mini bike, and that kid will remember the freaking little mini bike for a long time. That's how I got started. I had well, I didn't have a small engine mini bike per se, but I got started with early 70s Honda mini trails. Had a couple CT70s. My dad had a Z50, and you could beat the snot out of those things, and you know they pretty much ran forever. I mean, as long as you kept oil in them. I mean, nothing I had was super nice. A lot of them were just cobbled together with remnants of older bikes, but I bashed them through the trails and learned how to ride a motorcycle on that. And that's something that I'll never forget. I kind of regret not getting any pictures of me on it or anything, but I think my first one was a blue 70 or a blue 71. Had a light blue frame, and I think it was a black stripe kind of toward the fork end. And then the last one that I got rid of in the last couple of years, that was a 74. I got pretty good money out of that, only because I had a title for it, and it had a title, and it had markers on it, turn signals. So that one was pretty much street legal if you registered it and got everything working. I actually swapped a Chinese clone motor onto that, a 125cc. It ran pretty good. Kind of regret not making it manual, and I left it semi-auto, which was kind of boring, but whatever. Those things I couldn't believe it. You could. Oh, here I am talking about Chinese Honda clone motors. It's just starting right up, and I'm playing with these Honda or Chinese Honda clone motors that literally pull them out of the box, pour gas in it, pull it once, and they fire right up. So knock the Chinese all you want, but their clones are usually pretty darn decent. So for what it's worth, I know a whole bunch of people that have old vintage tractors that either can't find parts for the motors that originally came on them, or can't afford the parts to rebuild the old motors that are on them, and they end up putting $100, $300 Predator motors on them that have more power than the original motors that came on them, and are a lot more reliable, and they love it. So if you have to have a numbers matching tractor, well, then I guess you're going to be paying a bunch of money for Wisconsin parts, John Deere parts. The fact of the matter is, these cheap, shitty clone motors make more power and run better than any of that older shit. and parts are much more available, even though they're Chinese knockoffs. So go figure. But yeah. Like I said, some kid's dad buys this for him Christmas or after Christmas. A lot of memories on stuff like this growing up. One way to get started, I could tell you that. Had a lot of fun on mini bikes and go-karts. Problem is nowadays it's hard to find a place that the cops won't harass you unless you have your own property. I used to go in the woods. I used to find parking lots on the weekend and do that, but unfortunately everybody wants to sue everybody anymore, and it's a liability to have somebody riding a go-kart or a mini bike in your parking lot. So nobody does it anymore. Like I said, unless you have your own property. But I think that's kind of why kids nowadays aren't kids. But whatever. It is what it is. I just wish things would straighten themselves out, but I'll tell you one thing, my kid isn't going to grow up like that. My kid's already an outdoor kid. My kid loves doing stuff outdoors. My kid planted a garden this year with her grandfather. Harvested a whole bunch of vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, all that kind of stuff. So everyone keeps saying the world's changing, but it doesn't have to. You can still do the things that people did 50, 100 years ago if you want to. So let me get this thing started. I won't bore you anymore with my babbling, but once I start getting close, we'll pick it back up. Okay, well, I'm back. I think I got this thing pretty much aligned. What I'm doing is taking a screwdriver handle, put the flywheel on. There's a little notch here. There's a little notch in the handle of the screwdriver. That notch will go there, and there's another notch that actually goes in here where the coil pickup is. So I got it started, and what I'm going to do is tighten it as much as I can with my hand. And then I'm going to take channel lock, since my die holder doesn't fit this one, and run it down to clean up the threads. It's pretty hard. This thing was pretty boogered up. I actually bought a tool just for pulling these flywheels and flex plates and aftermarket flywheels off these things. gets past the chowdered area, it seems to straighten out and tighten much easier, only because the threads there down toward the bottom are pretty straight. I like to run this down as far as I can to clean up as much as I can without tightening putting the flywheel back on and having a bitch of a time pulling it off. So that's bottomed out, and now I'm going to remove the die. Man, that little handle would have been nice. Oh yeah, good as new now. Wow, that's perfect. So, take you off of here. I don't know if I took pictures before. But you can kind of see toward the top there, those first two threads, even going into the third, are super sharp. And that is because they were folded over from beating on them with a hammer trying to get this stupid flywheel to come off. So they're straight now to the point where I can take my die if I could see without doing it through the camera. There we are. So now I just need to get a new nut, and this engine's good to go. Good to go back on another motor. So that's cleaned up. That'll be ready to ship and get on this mini bike. So if you ever run into this problem, it is a M14 by 1.5 thread pitch for the Predator 212 crankshaft flywheel side. And I do suggest getting yourself a puller of some sort, although the powdered flywheels don't have any threaded bosses for a puller. I'm sure you could come up with something. Typically what I do on most of my small engines is you take a pry bar or a big screwdriver and wedge it underneath the flywheel, take a dead blow, back the stock nut off and whack it a few times, and usually it comes loose. Well, some of them don't. Some of them actually would get the point tool for my air hammer, put it down in that hole, brap it a few times, and usually that works it free. This one didn't. I don't know what was up with this one. Someone really Hulk smashed the nut on there, and this thing was kind of stuck. But I did eventually get it off, and I boogered up the threads on the crank a tiny bit. But that's squared away now. So this motor is good to go. Back on that frame, and put it up for sale. So I'm pretty much done with it. I am over my mini bike phase at this point. So that's all I got for you guys today. Sorry it was long initially and rambling on, but maybe some of you get some enjoyment out of my reminiscing of times past. Alright guys, have a good night, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.